Hey guys, welcome. This is the first ever episode of Cast and Commons. So, I am your host, Teasdale, along with...
Reese, co-host.
And we are going to look at the results of, I want to say major tournaments, but mainly focus on challenges currently. But any Pauper-geddons, any other events that come up, we are your place to be. So, let's dive right in. What have you been doing this week, Reese?
I guess this week and this month, given how we've got a few bits to look back to.
Yeah, that is true.
Finally, after Maine and Culdotha for so long, I went back to Elves and got to test Vine Shaper. It was not very good at all.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that's going back in the box. Cookie's done a recent list with like a more Landwire elf focus, cutting sentinels and such. So gonna have a look at that. F&M got to test the _ goblin from Unhinged with the stickers. That was there was some explosive games, but again, ultimately it seemed just a bit extra, a bit with more. There was obviously that cool game that we ended up having where it was turn 3, 20 odd damage from Culdotha, but
felt the pain of that one.
Yeah, it was pretty horrible. But yeah, putting that in, the cards that you cut made some of the matchups that did feel like unlosable, made them like a bit awkward. Like the mono blue matchup, you lose all the lava darts and the main deck ends and shit like that. So it just that went from feeling like an unlosable matchup to a really hard matchup, which is a bit weird. Yeah,
that's a fair one. I guess since though, obviously what will go further forward with the changes with Marching Machine, I could see the space being less there, so you can't really have lava darts and I say end the festivities, especially with Mind Goblin and also the new cards from March of the Machines. There's just less and less room for flex slots like all these cards that made mono blue really good.
Yeah, definitely.
So I could definitely see that. So
and then lastly, I've been playing a league with the new 8 Divination Culdotha, or the Rend Resolve Reckless Impulse Culdotha. Again, that seems a lot better than the _ goblin version, but it also seems like Culdotha is now just worse. Like the card Culdotha is worse, and with that much card draw, just like Thermal Alchemist, Burn, Flame Breather guy style would probably be better. So I'm gonna have a go with that.
I could see that definitely being the way forward. With all the draw in the deck, I could see another style of red deck definitely taking the mantle, because it just gets less hate as well. Like, you don't get fumes hate or whatever, so it'd definitely be good to try that out and see if that is the way forward and see what the
it is. Definitely feels like, obviously the mono red stuff's still good and it's still everywhere, but it seems like there's a lot more space at the moment till people figure out what the best way to build it is. But I think once that's figured out, it's just gonna be everywhere again.
Yeah, I can see that.
What have you been doing?
Weirdly enough, in Magic space, I haven't really played too much. I've definitely simmered down lately. I've been a bit busy. I've been engaging a lot of people to try and do other styles of content at the moment. So I've got a couple of things in the works. Obviously, this is one of them. So, well, obviously, this should be a weekly thing, discussing all the challenges and all that sort of stuff. Got a couple of things in the works, so once that's cemented up, we'll kind of see what happens there. And then I've recorded a couple of videos here and there. I've obviously got a backlog, so we've got Ponza, which is a fairly stock list. Nothing new since March Machine, because it doesn't need anything. We've got that should be out this week, so I look forward to see that. I've recorded a couple of brews with new cards. So the Cyber Cryptomancer, I think it's called, however you pronounce it.
Oh yeah, the guy that were trying in like FAMs and stuff like that.
Yeah, the backup hexproof card. I've got that. I've got a list with that in. I've got 2 brews with that in. Meeting of Minds, which is a pretty good one.
Yeah, it seems very strong.
FAMS has definitely adopted that very well, as will get into. So I've got a brew with that, and a brew with Halo Hopper, the frog, the free frog. So we'll see how those go. I've got a couple of brews wrote down, a couple of deck lists here and there, but need to throw in some tournament practice or deep end leagues to see if they come to fruition and see if I get recording with those. But that's pretty much it. Nothing too exciting, to be honest. Hopefully a lot more good stuff on the horizon though. So
Yeah, it sounds sweet. Especially Halo Hopper is quite a cool card. It'd be interesting to see if that
definitely
becomes a staple or not.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. But I'm a big fan of that card. It looks pretty good. A lot of different space for it as well, which I'm quite happy to mess with. It's not just restricted into my initial ideas of Stompy or something, for example. So yeah, we'll definitely see how they go on. There's a lot of interesting cards in Marcher Machine to definitely try. So definitely want to stick my teeth into them.
Yeah,
definitely get more time. But without further ado, the thing that everyone is really here for, and that is obviously the challenges of the weekend. The first challenges of the weekend with Marcher Machine. And it went kind of as I expected. I'd say not much change, as everyone will probably expect. I wouldn't expect massive amount of change, but definitely I would say like a sight to see what is coming.
There was a few like tech cards here and there in some of the lists.
Yeah.
People trying stuff.
There's so Saturday initially was won by Affinity. That's no one expected. Fairly stock Affinity as well. I can't really remember if there's anything untoward or anything. I think Counterspell Affinity came second as well, which had, I think it did have Final Flourish or something like that in the
Yeah, it had a 1-up, didn't it?
Yeah. 1-off Flourish I think was there. So that's not a bad one, not a bad card to have in that list. And I can't remember what exactly the order of the lists were, but yeah, I think obviously it was.
It's hard to tell on MTGO decks, I find.
Yeah, since
they just published the Swiss standings.
Yeah, I think since Daybreak they just published the Swiss standings as it was before Top 8. So, and then the standings at the top genuinely dictate what wins, I think, is how it works. So there was nothing really spicy in terms of Marcher Machine cards from memory, apart from the odd Meeting of Minds in FAMs, which came I think 7th or something like that, which was by good old.
Yeah, I think did he have 4 in one of the FAMs list? I think had 4 in.
Yeah.
It was this Saturday. I had 4 Meeting of Minds in this version.
And
the one of Cryptomancer as well,
which is pretty sweet. I like the that card's a card that actually surprised me in FAMs as well. Seems like a good addition for, because God Pharaohs can attack, and it also means you could never really block with God Pharaohs in like Kuldotha matchup because it just opens up to a bolt or a chain lightning.
Yeah.
So given that you can then obviously put it on there, and then it survive. It also kills the goblin while also not dying to a bolt. Is pretty good going. It's also a fodder for terror, so you can literally just block it with a terror and then Mortuary it back and all that sort of stuff. It's just fodder that you don't really care about, which is pretty nice, and something that FAMs has had trouble with, being like a Chainer's Edict is a good card against FAMs in general.
Yeah.
So it's quite a nice addition. My initial things of it was quite good, but I think GN definitely disagreed from the Sunday challenge, I believe. He was.
Yeah, it changed. It's GN who basically back-to-back top 8 in both the challenge with FAMs. But he did change his list between. I think he cut Meeting of Minds down as well.
Yeah.
So he maybe wasn't as impressed as some of the FAMs players.
Yeah.
On that one.
That's what it definitely looks like. Because he also didn't really like the Cryptomancer either. He cut that completely from memory.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the FAMs players were definitely a lot hyped about both of those cards. So,
but yeah, I think sticking with the Saturday challenge for now. Obviously, it was 2 Affinity, a mono red, which was a Kuldotha mono red, FAMs, which is what we were saying about. There was a mono blue Fair, a Terra, a white green gates and well, I say white green. It was 4-colour gates, but mainly white green, and a turbo fog.
Yeah, shout out to Kirby for that one.
So it was quite an interesting spread, but with obviously still a showing from Mono Red, Affinity, Mono Blue, and Terra and Gates, which you would expect.
Definitely a lot of the top decks that we've all seen from, previous metas, and Marching Machine hasn't really changed that, to be honest. If not, it's strengthened, I would say, 2 of the better decks in terms of FAMs and Kuldotha. Obviously, Ren's Resolve's definitely added to the red meta, and I think FAM's finally got new cards, which is always a bonus, even though FAMs is definitely a very good deck. It's just, I think we don't see a lot, obviously, due to time restrictions, and it's a very difficult deck to pilot, and you just got to be a good pilot. And as you can tell by GN's literally put up 2 results over the weekend, I think he tweeted saying he'd top 8'd like the last 7 challenges he'd played or something. It's just a pure pilot deck, and as a lot of people have picked that deck up and definitely just took away with events with it, especially on challenges on Magic Online, that's for sure. And I believe Terra in the Saturday challenge was Weber. I could be wrong, I think it was against. Which was also another good showing from the PFP, doing well. He definitely rocks that deck, and he does it really well. He's been pretty good pilot with Terror overall, I think.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of good showing from a lot of good players with Kirby, GM42, and Weber, and a good showing for the first initial big event for Marching Machine as well. It just set the tone, I think, that it just
it wasn't overrun with Mono Red as expected. Obviously, Affinity is still just probably the best deck by far. That's not really changed. It hasn't really gained anything. It hasn't really lost anything. Mono Blue still 7 sideboard cards against Affinity, 7 sideboard cards against Burn.
1 relic for good measure.
Yeah, just in case you play against Terra.
Yeah. Definitely seems to be a solid card. To be fair, again, it's just refining the deck, I think. Bryn Barrow was obviously a staple now. They've got most lists are pretty much the exact same 60. There's very few deviation between them, and once I found that stock list, it's just you can't really go wrong with it. It's a fairly solid choice. It'll always be good in a over. I don't really know what the word is, like an over something metagame, whatever the word. I can't think of the word right now, but basically, yeah. So once it's really good.
A more defined metagame.
Yeah, a very defined metagame, especially when it's low at the ground, lower cheap mana value costs. Like, obviously you've got Egg, you've got Kuldotha, you've got all these 1s and 2s everywhere. It's gonna do well regardless. It's always a solid choice.
Yeah, it's a shame it doesn't have so much space in the deck. It is very defined, and even the sideboard, as we were joking there, it's you see them all, and they're all just 4 Hydroblasts, X Blue Elemental Blast, 4 Annulls, X Steel Sabotage. Yeah. Obviously, that's a result of the meta currently, especially online.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brian Barrow's definitely been a big add in recent history, I guess, to that deck. It seemed to take quite a while to catch on, but now it's just staple for us.
Yeah, I'd agree, definitely. But I don't really think much else apart from in the Saturday kind of challenge. I think the top 8 as expected will probably.
I think the Turbo Fog's a nice outlier.
Yeah,
shows you can still do something off the wall and still top 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, I would agree with you that the top 7 are what you would probably guess.
Yeah. The gates being, to be honest, it's insert any gate deck here. It doesn't necessarily have to be white, green, or Nair, or 4-colour gates, or whatever. It's just a gate. But yeah, definitely. I'm definitely in agreement there. That is pretty much the standard 6 to 7 that I would expect to see in a challenge nowadays. Moving on to Sunday, we had Terra. I think Terra won it overall from memory, but we had a Terror in there. We had one Affinity, one Mono Red of some description. We had FAMs as well, a Gate deck, and then 2 Bogles.
Yeah.
So
again, sort of, that's sort of what we're saying with this Saturday challenge. It's basically the 6 decks that are almost exactly the same. The burns, the Mono Red slightly different. It's more of a burn. The Affinity is almost a mirror of one of the lists. The FAMs is again almost a mirror with the same pilot.
Mm-hmm.
The Terra Mono Blue are almost the same. The Gates is different because it's white blue instead of white green, but.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 Bogles is a nice outlier again. If you can, if you're good at mulliganing,
yeah,
you can get there with Bogles.
If mulligan's on your side, and you find those life links and spirit links, you're all good.
You got Modo Premium, you're good to go.
But yeah, I think definitely the challenges are, as I say, they're pretty much identical. As you've got 6 to 7 decks being exactly there, with a couple of outliers, which is. Again, just standard variants that Magic you would see, so nothing too exciting from the Sunday challenge, as you say. The burn deck is different, which...
Yeah, I think the burn is the more interesting one to sort of see the way it's being taken. I do think that the Kuldorfer, that like the card Kuldorfer in general, is getting worse now. And when you can churn that many cards with the Divination, or the Ren's Resolve and the Reckless Impulse, the more burn style is sort of looking like where you might want to put it.
Could definitely see that.
Thermo and Flamebreaker, they just churn so much damage when you see that many cards.
You've also, there is other Flame Breather style cards as well that you can just get redundancy. There's Firebrand Archer or whatever it is. So you're going to get to the point where you've got an abundance of Divinations and you've got an abundance of Pingers, and sometimes that's probably enough. So
yeah, I think that it was interesting seeing the egg in there in like a more burn shell as well. But I think again, egg with that many draw spells just gets better. And it doesn't even need to add to the Metalcraft or to the sack outlet. It just is
there.
It gets you the cards that you need to just burn them out.
Definitely.
The one Furnace I thought was a bit weird. In something like this, I would just assume a Cycle Land was better.
So there was no Metalcraft, no Galv Blast, nothing.
No.
Not this, no. So you just unsure. I guess it's maybe the same.
No, not Great Furnace. Sorry, the Autonomous Furnace.
Oh, sorry.
The ETB taps for a red, and you can pay 2 and sack it to draw a card.
The all will be one draw lands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my bad. Interesting.
But yeah, in something like this, if you're drawn off the top, you rip that. It's just worse than a Cycle Land. And then if you've got it early, you'll just play it anyway, so it'd be the same as a Cycle Land. So there isn't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's that much.
It is a strange one, and I guess obviously is. So say if you go leading on 1-drop, your second land could be the tap land, and then you can still get a draw a card later on, I guess. But other than that, there's very much few between that and the Forgotten Cave is probably where you would want it to be. Yeah, the challenge was definitely interesting. There's a lot of obviously very similar decks in both challenges as you're moving down into the top 32. You've got some Gate decks, you've got Affinity.
There was a lot of Affinity, I think, especially on Saturday. I was scanning through it. It did seem very well represented.
Yes, but again, I think with the well-known toys that Marching Machine brought, obviously bringing Ren's Resolve, probably people testing going into the challenge, they're probably seeing a lot of red. It might even to the point of the sideboard cards trimmed down on Affinity somewhat, maybe not a lot, but 1 or 2 slots, and it can matter here and there.
Yeah.
So that could have been a contributing factor as well. Also, considering it is also a really good deck, is also
it always does perform well in the challenges.
Yeah, it's always there on the top in the top tables somewhat. But I can. I would like to. It would be interesting to see moving forward in the next couple of weeks. I think I am optimistic in I want to say a negative way, that I hope Ren's Resolve may push Red over the top. not necessarily cold offer, not necessarily, could be kiln theme for all I care, really. I just think some red deck is going to be pushed over the top with Rend Resolve. Just having that much redundancy of divinations, it could push it somewhere that it needs to be dealt with, finally.
Yeah, I think especially at the moment, it's clear it's not. No one's solved it yet. Like, those two lists are very different. And if you look through the challenges, all the lists that you see are all very different. But I think when someone figures out what the best way to run it is, my thought is it's the more burn route, go away from the cold offer, from the artifact package. I think once that's figured out, it's probably going to be, again, just to A tier, S tier deck. And terrorising leagues.
Yeah, it definitely feels like Magic Online is definitely a different ball game at the moment to any Pauper event. But it shows, I guess, red is just the fastest way to play Magic Online in every capacity, and it's just everywhere. But yeah, I do think that secretly other decks are actually really well positioned and probably like the MVP. So like I would say FAMS is definitely the real winner, because it is it's very strong, very high win percentage, even though it's got low pilots. But again, it's just how difficult it is to pilot.
I think just the pilot on Magic Online as well is a big impact on it, how clicky it is. And how slow it can be to win. Whereas in Pauper you can just shortcut it pretty easily. But yeah, I do agree. It's probably one of the best decks at the moment, but it's just one of the hardest ones to play and to play effectively.
And I'd probably, in a caveat, I'd probably put Ultratron up there as well with that sort of thing. Like, Ultratron's just non-existent on Magic Online. It's very rare you see it do anything to do with the challenge because it's so time consuming. And Paupergeddon was a testament to that. Taking on the trophy. It is a good deck. It's just so hard to play on Magic Online for a lot of people. And again, it's just a pilot thing.
I think that's probably, again, a reason why this like Monstertron's finding its feet a bit. Because it's a Tron deck that you can play pretty easily on Magic Online. It's not dead clicking. You can just jam your bombs. And it does seem to have carved a bit of space out for itself. It seems a solid deck. I think there was there one or two in the challenges. But yeah, I think if Ultratron, like FAMS, was easier to play on Magic Online, it would be a lot higher or a lot more represented. Yeah,
I could definitely see that for sure. I do like the idea of some big green Tron monsters, especially with the new prototype card, the Game Life guys.
Yeah.
The Boulder Back Golem or something like that it's called, or whatever he is. Pretty sweet.
Yeah, it gives you something in a meta that's going to slant towards a red focus.
That is for sure. I definitely do need to add that to the run through a league test, because it definitely looks fun. I do love jamming just big dumb dudes and hoping that gets there. That's my kind of Tron deck.
It'll be quite a fun video to watch, to be fair. You should definitely do that one.
Add it to the list. I'll write that down right now.
Yeah, it's here on the Sunday. Yeah, it's the Sunday League on 29th place.
Right, okay. Just sneaking in there. There was definitely a lot of cool looking brews, I think, on the throughout the challenge. I think
not as many new cards as I would have expected. It was sort of just Rend Resolve, occasional one-off, especially on the Sunday. The Saturday, obviously, you got GRN with quite a few new cards, 4 or 5 new cards in FAMS, but again, once he'd cut them down on the Sunday, and then there just wasn't that much. Yeah,
you just had the Rend Resolve and the meeting in a cup, either 2 to 4s, depending on the FAMS pilot that was in the challenges, which in the last few sets, to be fair, the power level of commons has definitely went down, I would say. We're not getting to the point where you had like Experimental Synthesizer, Spirited Companion, and all, like, we had 4 or 5 cards that were strong and real good contenders for back in Cameo Neon Dynasty and around that sort of era. You kind of had a lot of cards that were impactful, it felt like, and you've kind of died down a bit. You'll be lucky to get 1 to 2 main cards, and then if that, to be honest.
Yeah. I think All Will Be One was quite light as well on it, wasn't it?
Definitely.
And obviously this we've got the Rens Resolve and Meeting, but again, there's past that you're scraping.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely could see that. That's hopefully we will get. To be fair, it is quite refreshing not getting so many new cards so often. Like sometimes it is, a couple of sets and nothing really happens and nothing really goes by. But I guess the big problem is for me at the moment is definitely Affinity and Red have been there for so long. Like prior, even in this power level, like they've been there almost since day dot really, and they've always been around. And it's just it'd be nice to get a card or an archetype that is kind of there and it gives it a run for its money, but I guess it probably won't do that unless potentially the power levels brought down a peg or two with both of those decks. But
yeah, it definitely looks, at least at the moment, like they're here to stay. The Affinity is a tough one. Since the bridges came, they've banned so many cards and it's basically just had no effect. Where in reality you could probably unban all those cards, ban the bridges, and Affinity would probably be worse.
Yeah, no. True.
But yeah, it continues to be the best deck, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and I don't think the PFP are in a rush to obviously change anything. They'll probably look at it as they do. With Marching Machines coming out and keep an eye on it, see what happens. But they've said obviously the meta, which it does, it on paper it looks healthy. It really does. Obviously you've got two high deck representations, but in terms of win percentages, they're just not there. They're there in terms of they're putting up results, but they're just not putting up the massive amounts of problematic results.
Yeah, it is really the leagues that drag it down, I think. But obviously you don't have as much data from that. But yeah, I think it does need to wait until this Red shakes out to see what it's like. Yeah. I can see it pushing it too far. Reckless Impulse was probably already one of, if not the best card in the deck, and now you've got 8 of them. But yeah, if someone can figure it out, it's going to dominate, I would say.
There was a lot of people crying out for Reckless Impulse to be banned before Ren's Resolve came about.
Yeah.
And now here's 8 of them, as you say. So, I think it's probably time that we probably look at a couple of decks that we kind of we've looked through the challenge results, and we've kind of brought our attention to a couple of decks that we really thought was interesting. I don't know why they stuck out to me. I don't know why they stuck out to yourself, but I think they're just good talking points because a lot of these deck choices are pretty different. There is a lot of questionable deck choice, like card choices and stuff. There's a lot of, I don't know, spice. I want to say spice. There's not necessarily new Marching Machine cards or anything, but it's definitely interesting decks that have definitely caught our eye. So I just want to take this time to kind of bring attention to some of these decks and obviously the pilots. And you'll have to forgive us if we mispronounce the pilot names, that is for sure.
Modo names aren't the easiest to pronounce.
Yeah, that is true. The first one I kind of want to look at is the 28th place list on the Saturday challenge by Madarameb, however you pronounce that. I don't think that was a very good rendition, that is for sure. And it's kind of like a Abzan Gate deck, which is kind of got the green-white kind of core, I want to say. Like core Skyfishers, Dawnbringers, Sacred Cats, Thraben Inspectors. The general start and practice to beating any red deck, or any Kuldotha-based red deck. You've got Thraben Inspector, which we all know is the best card to fight Kuldotha, secretly. The 1-mana 1/2. Sacred Cat, obviously great with gates, is definitely your healing salve on a stick, is Uro, as a lot of people like to put it as. And then you've obviously got some gate kind of package, you know, whichever one it'll be. So this green-white one's obviously got the mana gates, the black dragon gates, and the citadel gates with, to no surprise, 4 Basilisk Gate, because this card is a house. It is a reason to obviously run making tap lands, and since Baldur's Gate, it's obviously been a great addition to the format. I'm a big fan of making any big mid-range piles and just jamming gates in. I think it's a strong engine, like, just gives off payoffs for anything. But some of the card choices in this list definitely intrigued us. In not necessarily a good way, but I would like to know why. Like, so this deck, it ran 4 Satyr Wayfinders, being the main one that I didn't understand. And I'm down for Satyr Wayfinder, I love that card. But most green-white decks, they tend to run Great Creeper Vine, realistically. And there's no real graveyard interaction with this deck. That's what I can't understand. It basically is a guaranteed, well, not a guaranteed land, but it hits lands, obviously, and puts the rest in the bin. And the interaction...
I guess you've got the slight interaction of there's a 1 Omen of the Dead and 2 Chainer's Edicts.
And 4 cats.
Yeah, and 4 cats. 4 cats is not nothing, to be fair.
Yeah. But other than that, like, do you know what I mean? What happens if you mill your Omen of the Dead? Like, you could just literally...
Yeah, that doesn't seem great.
You could lose, like, your mid-range off because you've milled your Omen of the Dead. And a deck like this, which is fairly, I wouldn't say heavy stinted on black, but has a fair few black pips to the point where the mana gate and the citadel gate will be name and black to some extent.
It's definitely leaning into the black a lot more
than, say, like a 4
than normal. It's got a lot of removal.
Yeah.
And obviously the 1 Omen, the 4 cast down, 3 Fumes, 2 Edicts, and the 1 Omen of the Dead. That's just in the main, so it is leaning in it.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting one.
It's definitely an interesting one for sure, and the fact that you're heavily stinted on the black as well means you can get more omens going as well. Like, a big problem I found with, like, other gate decks that run an omen and it's an off-colour omen and they just run it because they're running gates. You don't really get the Omen, Core Skyfisher, Omen, Core Skyfisher, Omen, Core Skyfisher, your turn, kind of, if that makes sense. You don't get his 6 power. Like, they just go Omen, bounce it, because I only have 1 land on black. And I'm going again next turn until you run out of removal. Leaning heavily on this Omen of the Dead, can you just lose? Because you're better off in that gate mirror with the omens and all the removals and stuff, and it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, if you just mill it, it can go bad.
And I can't really overall see the full pros to run and Satyr Wayfinder than just Gate Creeper Vine and grab another Basilisk Gate.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting choice, and the only thing I can see is it can attack, which might matter. It also kills a Goblin, I guess, or an X1. So I'm definitely interested to see, like, the reasoning behind it. And I'm not saying it's a bad choice, because I'm definitely down for Satyr Wayfinder or Gate Creeper Vine. It's an interesting choice why they ended up on the Wayfinder. But the real MVP of this deck, this is one of my favourite cards to come from New Capenna. I absolutely adore this card. And that Jewel Thief in a green-white gate deck, oh my god, what a house. I am all for this every day of the week, all the way till Sunday. A Vigilance Trample. Like, Vigilance Trample with Basilisk Gate, like, sign me right up. I am all for this, that is for sure.
I think just making the black even more free in the deck as well. It's just, it seems like an auto include, really.
Yeah. Like, if I was to play any gate, green, white, black, Naya, 4 colour, any green, white, core shell gate deck, like, from now on, 4 Jewel Thieves, it's like, I've just had a light bulb moment seeing this deck. Like, why is Jewel Thief not been in any of my gate decks since now? Like, jeez. But yeah, this deck, I also do find funny when you do look at this list. Like, 4 Rebs in the side too. Like, 4 Red Elemental Blasts in the side, just why not? I've got 4 Jewel Thieves and I've got gates, like, it's free. Let's go. I am all for this. That is for sure. But yeah, I like the look of this list, and I love it. Like, even the value of Ephemerates just for crack. It's all. I'm good. I'm all for this. There is one thing that, to be fair, that I think that's pretty weird for me, is I just find most green-white decks in general, they run abundant growth. Most of them do. They run to either one copy or 4 copies, you know. And the thing that I liked about it, when I've played a couple of green-white core shell kind of gate decks, and the thing that I did like about it, even though it's like niche, but you get to play a card early because you usually go tap land, and you get to play a 1-drop. It's just another 1-drop that draws you a card that allows you to play your core Skyfish early without losing anything. And going Thraben into core Skyfish, and you're against red decks, most of the time you're going to have to bounce the clue to keep ahead on board or keep parity or whatever. You know, with Abundant Growth, you can go Abundant Growth on 1 and keep the core Skyfish. You're not bouncing on land, and you're still drawing cards. And I'm just a big fan of that. And it also fixes the colour, because you are running generally 4 to 6 colourless lands, in inverted commas, with the heap gates as well. Like, so I'm a bit curious on that choice as well. So
I guess that's maybe where the dual thief space is made. It obviously doesn't directly draw a card, but it fixes the mana in a similar way. It's obviously a beast of an attacker, and it's not the worst to bounce with Skyfish if you have to. It's an interesting one.
Definitely. Like, as again, I do like Abundant Growth, and I'm nothing against it being in the deck, being out the deck. I have no qualms with this list whatsoever. I am all for this list every day of the week. Like, this is my kind of deck. There's a couple of things that and I'm not saying that it's not logically like, why are these in there, or why aren't these in there? Because I'm all for turning things that people take for granted on its head. Like, we do get to a point for that Magic as a whole, we see lists over time, and then we just assume, like, this card's in there, it must be good, and then no one challenges why these should be in lists. And you can often find that in a lot of deck results, like 3 months down the line, someone's still got a one of whatever in the deck, and it's like, why? And it's like, oh, it was always in there. So, and I'm all for this list. This is my kind of list. Is there anything else you want to bring attention to on this list?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. It is a cool list. It's nice to see a different take. People taking out a card that's basically an auto 4 of in gates or in green based gates, and then replacing it with something similar but with a different slant. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Obviously, having the extra attacker may be really good. Yeah. Having the slight graveyard synergy may be really good.
Yeah, I definitely might have to. I'll add this deck to the list of things I need to try out, because I need to test all these things for myself, because what a list.
I think, funnily, my pick for the Saturday deck was also a Gates list. Although mine was the Alvatar top 8 list, which was a 61 card special. Yeah. So that initially drew me to the deck. But it's also just got a load of sideboard cards in its main deck, which is cool.
Always a good one.
But yeah, so this is also green, white gates, splash and red for some flame slash and a smash to dust in the main, and splash and black for a suffocate fumes also in the main, as well as sideboard cards. But yeah, 4 main deck Relic of Progenitus, a main suffocating fumes, and a main smash to dust.
Yeah, it's definitely a solid one. I do like Alvatar's takes on, because he's been playing a deck similar to this for quite a while, and it appears occasionally. Obviously, the numbers sort of change, and his lists they are spicy.
Yeah.
Like, damn.
But yeah, obviously he's still on the 4-gate Creeper Vines. Got the Armadillo Cloaks in there for some life gain against red, and got the Abundant Growth as well, but obviously he's gone down to 1 now. No Omen, which is interesting. But I guess if you're maining 4 relics, there's no real space for that. It's just you're not gonna have a graveyard.
Yeah. No, that is definitely true. I guess the same principle is kind of there with space, because a lot of these, like 4-color Naya Gates kind of decks, they also run Ephemerate as well, but there's no list, and it's not there obviously in this list, and it's just pure space. Like, the guy couldn't fit everything in. He's got 61 cards, so
the one I've opened the gates is definitely an interesting one. I think there's a lot of one-offs where you think, what, you couldn't cut one card?
I guess
One abundant growth, one fumes, one smashed at us, one open the gates.
I guess you need 5 gate creeper vines, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
But yeah, three flame slash. I've been pretty high on this for a while. It seems just really good at the moment.
Yeah.
Other than the Terra matchup, which he's got 4 relics in his main. There's not much it doesn't kill. And it's pretty efficient at doing it. If you can't get Scred in your deck because you're playing a load of non-basics, it seems a pretty good option.
Yeah, I'm starting to lean towards you. You've been hyped on this for a long time, Flame Slash. Now I'm starting to lean on it. I'm seeing a lot of Flame Slashes and a lot of Unholy Heats crop up here.
That's another good one.
It's not for a deck with 4 relics in the main and end, but in particular. But Flame Slash and Unholy Heat are definitely cards I'm warming up to. When I build my janky brews that are red based, that's sort of what I'm leaning towards in removal now. Sorcery's a problem, but not enough to be like that hindering, if that makes sense. Like, definitely a solid choice of removal spell.
Yeah, and then his sideboard's pretty stock. There's nothing too untoward. There's a few one-offs. Twin Silk Spider obviously has been getting a lot of play at the moment. It's got one of those. The three Rebs, the 3 Pyroblasts. Dust to Dust for Affinity and some Acolytes for mono red. Apart from that, there's nothing amazing about, well, nothing out of the norm.
Yeah.
But yeah, 61 card special. Few sweet one-offs. I thought that was a good pick.
Yeah, definitely. I really like the 4 Guardians as well. Like,
yeah,
that's a big statement. That is how I am winning the game. Definitely. You can't answer 4 of them, kind of thing. That's how I am killing you. It's pretty solid. But
I think that's maybe something where I've forgotten the guy's name. The 3-mana 3/3 that makes a treasure.
Yeah.
Jewel Thief. That's sort of that. Yeah. That's sort of that space.
Yeah.
Obviously, Guardians are a lot harder to kill than Jewel Thief. Costs a bit more, but obviously the mana in this version is nowhere near as stretched as in the green, white, black version. Because the red is just a splash. So yeah, the fixing doesn't look as necessary. So yeah, Guardian seems a really good choice.
Also, interestingly, the go for this list obviously has the 12 tapped gates, like the Cliff Gate, Citadel Gate, Mana Gate. The other list only had the 10, but kind of give up the slots for 2 bogs by the looks of that, which is again, I think you don't really. I think I'm a big fan of going all in on gates, and I would, if I was heavily black splashed, I think I'd probably prefer the relics and then have a better mana base.
I guess that's a payoff to the 4 relics in the main, is it essentially frees up a land or 2 in your slot for more gates rather than bogs.
But yeah, I'm definitely a big fan on all these mid-range gate piles, that is for sure. And the colour combinations will keep on spinning, like, you'll completely be different. You've obviously got white, blue, green, white, X, green, white, XX. You know, you've got a lot of different colour combinations, and they're all pretty much the same and all pretty strong, because Basilisk Gate is just a house to deal with.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
And then I think for the 2 decks from Sunday, obviously yours is first in the dock, but looking at what you've picked, I think we'll go over mine first.
Yeah, mine.
Because yours is more interesting.
Mine's wild.
So again, I'd picked a top 8 list that was the burn.
What a win hoarder.
Yeah, mono red. The mono red list from Sunday that top 8'd, which was a more burn focused. It didn't have any cult offers. It didn't have the artifact package. It didn't have Galv Blasts. But it was has 3 Thermal Alchemists as well as 4 Flame Breathers. And I just think this, in general, the more spell heavy burn is probably going to be where it ends up. With 4 Impulse, 4 Resolve, 4 Sim first card draw. You lose the artifact package, but you gain loads of burn spells. Searing Blaze seems really good right now.
Yeah.
And Thermo and Flame Breather type effects seem amazing with all 8 impulses.
Even moving forward as well with Searing Blaze, like if it does move that this is the norm, it still is great. Obviously, you hit
it's going to get better.
Every Flame Breather.
Yeah.
It's definitely a solid one.
Apart from that, nothing really spicy. The sideboard's pretty stock. 4 Shattering Blows for Affinity, 4 Raises for Tron, 3 Gorilla Shams for Affinity, some Relics for Terror, Graveyard decks, and 1 End the Festivities. It's already got 3 in its main, so it doesn't really need much more 1 damage effects.
Yeah.
With the amount of mono blue that's getting played, it's probably pretty good. If people are still on Cold Offer, it's obviously going to be good. Yeah.
Fairly solid, and obviously all the with all the thermos, flame breathers and stuff. I'm definitely an advocate for End the Festivities over Electricity any day of the week.
Yeah.
No brainer. The as you say, the furnace is interesting in this deck. One autonomous furnace. But
I think that's the I'm assuming they were just testing it out. Just looking at the deck, I think I'd be on a cycle land, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. You could argue there's cases where you would rather have one than the other, and vice versa. It's just whichever one comes up more often. Really.
I don't know how far you need to go to make Galv Blast playable over the Chain Lightnings. Like, if you just put 4 Great Furnace, you've got 4 Simps, 4 Epicures still. That's probably not enough. I think you do need the Star or the Implement, I guess, but yeah, it's definitely something that will probably be worked on a lot at the moment. And I imagine we'll see it next week. There'll be a burn somewhere and it'll show us more how it's shaken out.
I could definitely see an argument for no Alchemist as well, no Thermos, and go into the Firebrand Archer as well, as you say, if you want to lean into Galv Blast. Because I believe Thermo says instant and sorcery, right? So it doesn't trigger off synth. Obviously, there's pros and cons to both, where the Flame Breather and the Archer say non-creature, I think. So you can get more triggers there. You can obviously play play Chromatic Star and triggers there. So there's arguments for slight tweaks on this list, but I do agree with you. I think this kind of list personally is probably the way Red will look, and I do think, I think people have been looking for a reason to cut Cold Author for a long time. It's always been a weak point, but also a really good point in this sense of how much damage you can push out. I think cut and Rebirth is probably a good thing now, especially it's another way they can't hit out the deck. Smash to just gets worse against you, Suffocating Fumes, all that sort of stuff. So it's just another avenue that they can't attack you from, so it'll be pretty interesting to see how Red in general develops over the next coming weeks. Definitely. I am definitely all for watching Cold Author paint the town red. That's for sure. I am all for that.
Yeah, so your Sunday deck choice is a deck that you are very fond of.
I am, definitely. Anyone who watches this channel and obviously my channel in general, I absolutely adore this deck. And this deck is, the best way I can describe it is it's a total mess, but in an absolutely fantastic way. It is so messy and it's just an absolute pile. And the card choices this person's obviously chooses, which is by, let's shout this person out, is Leo Bertui. Let's go with that.
Seems fine.
Close enough. Apologies if I did mispronounce your name, because I am definitely a fan of this deck, because some of these card choices, oh my god. So, Lamore Visionary, there's 3 copies of Lamore Visionary to start with.
So if you're on audio only, it's the deck's mono black gardens.
Yes, sorry.
Or green black gardens. It does have a lot of green cards in.
Yeah, well, this
compared to normal.
It is green black gardens, mono black gardens, whatever you want to call it, and it basically is probably an evolvement on like mono black Devotion, I would say, where it's now like it originally came from like using Deadly Dispute as an engine with Colony Garden and stuff, and then just controlled the board with bombs and killed them. But Pauper again, we obviously got a top 8 list that was pretty similar to this. You could see it was definitely the starting point for this list. And it ran 4 Avenging Hunters, it ran 4 Guild Swarm Prowlers, 3 Crypt Rats, 8 Deadly Dispute effects. It ran 2/2 split of Spinning Darkness and Snuff Outs. 4 Chainers, 4 Cast Down was like the general consensus. But like the changes in this list, as you can see, like if you can't see, you can also check it out on Magic Online. And it ran this one runs Larmor Visionary, and it's cut down on Guild Swarm Prowlers, and that is just a really weird change for this deck. Anyways, because the deck runs 3 Rot Farms and 4 Colony Gardens, and did run a Forest as your green sources, with also getting treasures here and there from like Deadly Disputes. This list has changed the Forest for a Crystal Grotto, and the reason I'm assuming is because of the Gorilla Shamans in the sideboard of this green-black deck, with literally treasures and a Crystal Grotto to cast them. You've obviously got the treasures, I guess, from the initiative, from Arena as well. So this deck is just wild. We've only got 5 draw effects. We've got 4 Deadly Disputes, 1 Reckoner's Bargain, which I'm down for cutting from 8. But 5 seems like a lot to cut down to. Cutting 3 is a lot. I would probably settle on 6 personally. I could see.
It does seem very low.
And then it runs 1 Wellspring out of instead of 4, which again another what? It runs 2 Guild Swarm Prowlers as well, which again I'm fine with cutting down on those. But 1 Wellspring, they're definitely, to me, the Guild Swarm Prowlers seems like you would run 4 Wellsprings, and it's the 5th and 6th Wellspring first before I would run Prowlers. But I guess it does block, so, and it kills terrors. It's got Death Touch. It's a 1 black 2/1 with Death Touch. So
the 2 Fungal Infection in the main, is that the black instant -1/-1 Mecha 1/1?
Yeah, that's the one. So you do.
I guess that's pseudo, gives you fuel for your disputes and bargains. It's an interesting call. Obviously, it's very heavy on killing low toughness guys. There's 2 Fungal Infection, 2 Fumes, and a Shrivel in the main, with obviously 3 Crypt Rats as well.
Yeah.
So it does seem very aimed at that sort of mono blue cult offery style.
The Shrivel's a weird choice as well to me. That stands out like a sore thumb. Like, you're running 2 Fungal Infections, so you've got 2 1/1s there. You've got 4 Colony Gardens, which make plants. Obviously, these aren't really that relevant, but you've got 3
Crypt Rats, yeah.
And you've got 2 Guild Swarm Prowlers, also X1s. And all these die to Shrivel.
Yeah.
Like,
you just got to time it right.
Yeah, honestly. And then you've got a 3-drop in Larmor Visionary, which is 2 and a green, with your, 8 plus Deadly Dispute ways of casting it, which isn't many to cast on turn 3. I like that it draws a card. I'm down for that. Sure, I'm all for that. But seems like an interesting 3-drop to choose. Because I do notice when I do play this deck, like, it does feel like it does need an early drop that can kind of contest. Like, Crypt Rats doesn't really fill that slot because you don't really play early and you don't really block very well, obviously. So I can definitely see, like, having some sort of 3-drop there that's replaced itself as Visionary does, and maybe there just isn't a black one there. Like, I imagine Phyrexian Rager would probably fit that slot probably better, potentially.
I guess one thing that I'm sort of seeing here is that the mana may be important, because if you look in the sideboard, there's 2 Fengra Marauders.
Yeah.
So I imagine to cast that in any sort of reasonable way, the Visionary is probably quite key.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sideboard in of itself is quite wild. There's 1 Relic, 2 Fengra Marauder, 1 Raven's Crime, 2 Gorilla Shamans, 3 Wrenchmind, 3 Duress, 1 Crypt Rats, 2 Weather the Storm.
Yeah, it's definitely...
It's got sort of like an 8-rack sideboard thing going on with the 7 discard spells.
It's definitely a solid sideboard. If you can cast all them spells when you want to cast them, fair enough. That is kind of, you want your Wrenchmind against these control-based, ephemerate decks, I guess. They're probably solid enough, sure. Duress is the same, but like, if you can cast Wrenchmind on 2, fire away. If you can cast your Gorilla Shaman in a timely manner, wow, well done. That is a...
It definitely does look like Wrenchmine would be tough to cast on 2. With, is it 11 untapped black sources? And that's it. Yeah, it's a definitely a cool take, and obviously it's won some games in that challenge. Come 14th, he's not terribly low down. So there is definitely something there.
Is it the power of initiative with 4 Avenging Hunters?
Yeah, could be.
No Vampire Sovereigns is quite interesting, and no Unexpected Fangs. 2 things that surprised me in that list.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't even have that much against mono red. It has the 2, obviously all the shrivel effects, I guess, if the go called offer are going to be big. And it has 2 weathers in the side. The Fengram Marauders are probably too slow in this deck compared to being in Tron. Yeah.
Also, not many artifacts either for yourself to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like with standard Gardens, you've obviously got your 4 treasures, you sacrifice on Wellsprings, and you sacrifice on Blood Fountains as well. Sometimes even Spell Bombs if you've got them. It's like you've got a fair bit of fodder-ish, and you're definitely losing out on Wellsprings. That's for sure.
I guess you've got the 4 treasures off the 4 disputes.
Yeah.
You've got 1 Wellspring and 2 Blood Fountains with their tokens, and is that it?
I think so. Unless obviously Vault goes for whatever reason, but
yeah, if you sack Vault.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's a list. It's definitely a list.
Yeah, and I'm definitely a fan because I'm here for Wild Gardens lists because the list, the engine's there. Don't get me wrong, the engine is there, and that's probably where this ends for lists like obviously the one that won Pauper by GM, and he also won the French Open as well. Like that's probably setting the precedent moving forward, and you can see his list in this deck. So. But before that, there wasn't really like a list. It was all, you have 4 Gardens, you have a couple of Bounce Lands, and you have Deadly Dispute and Reckoner's Bargain. And that was probably where the line ended. Everyone else was just adding cards in what they saw fit for the meta. So
yeah, I think the strongest bit about Gardens has always been just that engine, that draw engine plus pile of removal.
Yeah.
And obviously this still has the pile of removal with the 4 edicts, 4 cast downs, 2 darkness, 2 snuff outs, 2 fungal infection, 2 fumes. Like you've got that removal.
Yeah.
But cutting the engine down, like with only 1 Wellspring, 1 bargain.
Yeah.
You're cutting a lot out of the engine. I guess like the Visionaries do draw cards.
Yeah. True.
So the free Visionary could be like the pseudo Wellspring replacement.
But then it's casting that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely here for experimental lists, and I'm definitely here for all sorts of different attempts on this deck because it does have a lot of problems. It's got a lot of raw power to it with, as you say, the Deadly Dispute engine, but it's also got a lot of problems, and people messing with this list trying to figure out those problems and them holes that are in that deck, I'm down for. And Fungal Infection is one card that definitely caught my eye on this. Another token for sacrifice and Deadly Dispute just... Yeah,
I would agree with that, to be fair. Especially if Mono Blue keeps doing as well as it's doing the Fungal Infection, 1 mana instant speed, counter his spell stutter, activation or kill a guy and get something out of it is really good.
It could even potentially be kill his guy, block his ninja, Deadly Dispute away.
Yeah. Also, yeah.
I'm definitely here for Fungal Infection, but again, it's a card that I look at that card in terms of Mono Black Gardens and I see... That makes me want to make sure I'm playing 8 Deadly Disputes, or at least 7. Do you know what I mean? I do agree there is reasons to cut down, and there has been times myself where you just don't have anything to sacrifice. You just can't. You don't have enough fodder, and Fungal Infection makes. Oh well, actually, giving me 2 more things for fodder is definitely making me want to lean more heavily on that engine, not take away, which is obviously what this list's done. But it's definitely got some raw power that I'm definitely not seeing.
What's your thought on the 1 Thorn as, I guess, like a 5th initiative-esque guy, I guess?
So, I didn't play Avenging Hunter generally in my lists. It's a card that is obviously a pseudo problem. You can't just jam it on 5 like you can Vampire Sovereign and it'll hold. somewhat. If you play the Avenging Hunter and you are not ahead or on parity, you could potentially lose the game because it'll just take like them having the initiative will just take over the game. You are very hard on taking back the initiative unless you play another Avenging Hunter. But I didn't play that, but I did play Thorn, and Thorn to me was one of the hardest cards for me to cut generally because it was such a solid. It's a solid card that went as in the same vein of initiative. If you are ahead, if you are on parity, it will actually bring you ahead. And then, but you could also, in theory, risk playing it behind without losing the game as much as you do with the initiative, because the initiative will physically kill you with the forge and the trap. But I'm a big fan of Thorn, and 2 was my kind of sweet spot, and I can definitely see 1 being also fine because there is some matchups you just don't want it. So I'm definitely down for that, and I think it is pretty solid as a 5th initiative if you are running heavy on this. But I personally found that Avenging Hunter as a 4 of's quite a lot. I'd probably, if I was to play this deck, I wouldn't play 4 in the main. I'd probably go 2 main, 3 main, ones, and then the rest in the side. Because there is some matchups you want it, but with red everywhere, it's not really a card you want a lot of the time, because you can't stabilise with it, is my personal opinion on it anyways. I do like, my big thing that I do like about James' list and also this kind of list is the 2 spin and 2 snuff out. That is a nice sweet spot that I've liked. Spin and Darkness is a card that I've definitely liked in Gardens a lot. But you can't really run more than 2 because of the black card count. And also this list is also even worse than that because you are running Avenging Hunter and Larmor Visionary as well. But definitely a big fan of this deck. And I'm all for all these strange choices, and there's definitely a lot of the cards that I've seen that list and I'm like, that's actually a fair one. Fungal Infection being one. Crystal Grotto to an extent as well. Kind of not too bad as a Forest. It replaces the Forest in the initial list from Pauper. It looks like anyways. And
is Crystal Grotto the scry one or the
it's the scry Shimmer and Grotto. Right. So it's pretty nice, to be fair. I do like that card. There's very few cases that you would want to Avenging Hunter get a Forest. Yeah. So Crystal Grotto seems perfect to me because it is a green source that you just naturally find. You can't search for it, but there's very few cases that you would want to search for it if you have the initiative. So I'm definitely down for that. It's a green source that's also a black source, which is, and Scrysure. So I'm all for this list. Hopefully it fits some final flourishes in a list like this when I mess about with it is probably my next thing. I'm big on that card. Very big. Kills Kenku Artifact lands, which is my big hype for Final Flourish.
Yeah, and if you can kick it, obviously it kills basically everything you're worried about. Kills all the terror stuff. Yeah. Kills the Kenku indestructible stuff. Even on the low end, the -2/-2 kills a lot of the stuff you're bothered about. But yeah, if you can kick it, it's ideal.
I wouldn't say it's a jam 4 of, but it probably could replace something like Shrivel in this list or something. Maybe even 1 cast down or something like that. I don't think you're not playing 4, but it's definitely a card that I'd consider to at least have some out to Kenku lands. It's a big problem for Mono Black Gardens, I've found.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely hyped on that list. I am definitely all for all of these decks that we spoke about. The Gates decks are definitely big things I keep my eye on. I've got a soft spot for Gardens, so that's obviously how I had to pick that deck when I seen it. And I'm definitely into seeing how red turns out, and I do think you are right. I think Flame Breather and Alchemist is probably going to be the way to go, moving away from Cold Author. So
yeah, I think that sort of brings us into our sort of last topic, is what we think will happen next week, basically. What we think that the challenges will shake out to. My first thought is they're going to be somewhat similar to this. There's going to be Affinity's still going to be good. Mono red, if someone figures it out, is going to be there still. Even if someone doesn't figure it out, it's strong enough that some version will probably make the top 8.
Yeah.
Phantoms, if someone's willing to play it, will be there. And mono blue, Gates and Terror in some form will all be there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely where I'd say I'd be like as you say, an unoptimized version of Cold Authors or Red, I guess we should say in case Cold Author goes.
Yeah.
Is definitely going to be strong. I just think Ren's Resolve's just gonna eventually just shake it up. Someone will figure out the red deck. All the stuff that's unoptimized for it will just fall out of favour. Cold Author, Galv Blast probably could potentially fall out of favour, and you just get more like a traditional burn with just a bunch of divinations, and that's probably where it all depends on how things are figured out. I think, but I do agree you're gonna get affinity there in some numbers, some deviations. Someone will run counterspell affinity, but that rarely shows up in challenges. Someone will run maybe the Pauper getting list with a bunch of Gear Seekers, but it'll still essentially be the same list. And then you've got obviously Red will appear there, and then Gates. Gates will constantly just evolve with whatever people want to put in their kind of mid-range deck. Is it going to be green-white based? Is it going to be blue-white with core gates or some sort of vein of that sort of Squadron Hawk kind of engine with brainstorms and deep analysis with the modern age Vector Glider?
Yeah.
Could be something.
It'll be interesting to see as well if there is an uptick in red, there'll be obviously an uptick in black-white to sort of farm it.
Yeah.
Obviously those top eights are pretty varied. There's no red domination. If you look at the challenge, it's not like really heavy red, and as such, there's not that many black-white decks either.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be interesting if red does pick up and become the best deck.
Yeah. I think
black-white also picks up.
I think the big thing is definitely how, especially moving forward, maybe not next week, but over, the next 3 or 4, is seeing how red evolves. Would also, as you've said with the black-white ephemera, is just how people deal with the format. At the moment, life gain or incremental life gain and fighting for the board, i.e. Thraben Inspector or being on the board early is proven to be a really good tactic. And if that isn't the case, if they're moving towards Flame Breather and less on Cold Author, it might become like big life gain spells is potentially the future. You don't need to rely on having early board players, just early removal for a Swift Spear is ample.
Yeah.
It could take away from how good or how important Black-White, Flicker and Goliath Paladin decks have been for the recent future. So, what do you think moving forward is like? Do you think that is exactly how it should go? Do you think that's better if it's less on the board? Do you think it's more forgiving, less forgiving, or because I think
I think like we were saying before, basically if it does go that burn route, obviously it's harder to just hard counter it. Obviously the Cold Offer's been very powerful, so even though people are sideboarding against it or even main decking against like the multiple goblin tokens, it's powerful enough to justify. But yeah, if the burn side of things is the way to go, there obviously is going to be a drop off in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, other decks, moving away from talking about mono red, as I feel like we've done that quite a lot.
Yeah. Sure.
Obviously the gates decks in these challenges have been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone is different. They're all testing different cards. They're all playing different colours. It'll be cool to see how that shakes out. Obviously the gate package is really strong. You can do a lot with it and still win. So I expect to see more gates in the top 8, but whether they'll be anywhere close to what we've seen in these 2 challenges, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The core's there, but yeah, you can do a lot around that core.
Yeah, very true. What would you play if you were to play next week's challenge? Just red, some form of red, or affinity, or what?
Probably affinity. If I wanted to win, probably affinity.
Yeah.
If I wanted to test out sort of the more burn style mono red list, and I wasn't fussed about winning, I'll probably try that with some number of either Thermos or the Archer with the 8 divinations and 4 eggs. I also think that there is space somewhere for Tron to do well, but I don't know what Tron list it is. Obviously, like you say, there's the combo Tron, the Ultratron is like really, really good, but it's just so hard to play on Magic Online unless you're insane at clicking on Magic Online.
Yeah.
I think if one of the people who are the best at playing it on Magic Online plays it, they'll probably do really well. But other than that, there wasn't much Tron at all in the challenges. There was that one like Monster Tron on the Sunday. But yeah, it'd be cool to see someone pick up Ultratron. Obviously, it does have its challenges. What about yourself?
I think if I was some trigger happy guy, I think I would probably play FAMs, but I'm not the best pilot. I think I'm also not the fastest pilot, as people well know. So I think FAMs would be my choice of probably one of the decks to win if I could play it well. If you're not comfortable with that, I'd probably play some green-white gate pile. I think green-white X is probably where I'd be. One thing that I would say, maybe not next week, but moving forward, there is, I'd say something like, I could see Pestilence actually making a resurgence.
Yeah.
Which is a bit out there. I'd say at the moment would have been non-existent for so long with the Goliath Paladin black-white decks being everywhere. But I'd say that's just based on, depending on how Ren's Resolve shakes up, if it becomes less to the board and more to massive amounts of life gain, that deck does it really well. With Pristine Talisman, Lone Missionaries, Irishing Clerics.
Like the old school Pestilence.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that potentially making a resurgence, but again, all depends on how the red deck changes, because it's a white-based deck. It has Dust to Dust, it's got Revoke, it's got all those sort of things to pseudo deal with Affinity. It's just trying to...
Or at least try to deal with Affinity.
But you've naturally got like main deck Graveyard here with Bajuka Bogs. You've obviously got Dust to Dust for the indestructible lands, and you can deal with Kenku artifact lands a lot easier with Pestilence plus Chainers. So there's definitely like a lot of pros to being able to deal with Affinity, and then also you just need to kind of shore up the red base matchup, but that all depends on how it looks. So I could potentially see Pestilence making an appearance in definitely a top 32 in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So cool. I'd definitely like to hopefully see that. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for Pestilence. So yeah, I think we've definitely wrapped up the podcast for today. And I'm definitely happy how our first ever episode went. So
we didn't talk over each other too much, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I definitely have a way to do that. I'm definitely an impatient person, that is for sure. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and this hopefully should be a weekly thing, and we will mostly look at challenges, I think, moving forward. Obviously other bigger events that, especially something around the time of like Paupergeddon and things like that, we'll definitely review those. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this podcast, if there's anything that we can do that's better. Obviously this is our first ever time, and we are staring at videos and sometimes forgetting we are audio. And that's probably my bad mainly, more than Reese's, that's for sure. But I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and we have been casting commons all week, and we'll see you again next week.
See ya.